Hello, everyone. My name is Miguel. I'm one of the co-founders of WDL, the World Data League. It's a pleasure to be with you all today, and thank you for joining us in this event. We are actually tuning in from the Eurocities offices in Brussels, Belgium, and we have a lot of interesting stuff today. So just to give you a brief overview, I will start by shortly presenting WDL, our Insights Report of 2022, and a new project that we are about to launch. After that, Leon, also a co-founder of WDL, will join us to present in bigger detail the challenges and solutions of WDL 22. And we will also have two teams that participated in WDL 22 presenting their solutions. Later on, we will host a panel discussion with João Bastos from Porto Digital. They are a non-profit focused on innovation and technology in the city of Porto in Portugal. And Daniel Githira from UNHabitat. They are the United Nations Program for Sustainable Urban Development. Lastly, depending on the amount of questions from all of you, we will host some breakout rooms for deeper discussions and finish the event with some conclusions. At the end of each session, there will be time for Q&A from the audience, so please don't hesitate. And now let's start off by explaining what is WDL for everyone who is new here. This that you see here is our long-term mission at WDL, to accelerate the creation of accessible, data-driven solutions for social impact. WDL is a nonprofit focused on facilitating the creation of such projects and solutions for problems that cities truly need to solve. To guide us in defining and categorizing these projects, we take advantage of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals with a focus on what we call data-driven communities. These can be countries, cities, neighborhoods, you name it. We tackle challenges that affect these communities, and those challenges can be targeting any one of the UN SDGs. Well, but in fact, that's easier said than done, right? So how do we actually do this? So WDL, every year we host an international data competition. We work with what we call topic entities. These can be NGOs, companies, local governments that provide us data and real world challenges that they have. We then gather up teams of data scientists who compete to develop proofs of concept with code, product ideas, and social impact analysis. And these teams submit their solutions for evaluation by a technical jury. The best solutions are awarded prizes, and they are included in our outputs. What are those outputs? That's the million-dollar question. Well, there are mostly two. On one hand, we have our Insights Report. It's a comprehensive document written by us at WDL that compiles all the findings from the competition, the data sets used, the technical methodology, the main insights gathered, ideas for transforming these solutions from proofs of concept to real products, and obviously the most important, the social impact analysis. This is a useful document if you want to browse through the challenges and get a high-level overview of the solutions. And it's also 100% free to use and consult at any time you need. On the other hand, in case you have the resources and time to dig deeper into the technical side, we also output all the developed code with a completely free-to-use license, and you can freely adapt it to your use case. Both links for the Insights Report and for the code base will be shared here on the chat. And if you are watching this in recorded version, the links are available in the video description. But in fact, there's a third output that we are preparing to launch very soon. Looking at the objective of WDL that I mentioned before, to accelerate the creation of accessible, data-driven solutions for social impact, we are launching what we call our Social Impact Hub. What is that? It's an online platform, 100% free to use as well, where anyone can browse through all the challenges and solutions in an intuitive and simple way. This is the homepage where you can easily filter through all the challenges and solutions from all editions of WDL by category, for example, environment, public transportation, traffic, etc., and also by data science field. So if you're coming in from computer vision, time series, optimization, and so on, and also access the free-to-use code base. So let's imagine a few use cases for this. Imagine you are a local government. I know that there's some of you here that come from cities. And imagine that your city has a very serious mobility problem. We have some data, you have some data that you've been gathering throughout the years, but you're a bit lost on what to do with that data, or even if that data has good quality. You can filter challenges in the WDL Social Impact Hub to find that there are already solutions that were submitted in 22 that address that issue. In this case, there's two. One about optimizing bus routes during road interruptions, and another one about predicting the flow of passengers, for example. Or maybe you are a company focused on the area of geospatial analytics. You can just filter by data science field and you will gain access to all the geospatial projects that we did before, such as these ones from 22. With this project, we expect more entities to create their own projects by leveraging the effect of open and free knowledge, essentially not reinventing the wheel and starting from scratch every time. We want to collaborate with these entities, people like you, to continue to create more and more solutions every year. So there's also a way to contact us, and please don't hesitate to use it. The link to the WDL Social Impact Hub will be shared once the platform goes live, which will be very, very soon. And if you're watching this in recording version, it's already live, most likely, so you can access it on the description of the video. Now, I will pass the mic to Leon to explain in more detail everything related to the WDL 22 challenges. See you in a bit.
All right, and thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Miguel, for this nice presentation, and it's great to have everyone here. And I'm also excited to present a bit what happened during the World Data League 2022. And we have also some of our star teams with here that will present their work. But first, let's maybe recap some numbers. Well, even though today you will only hear from 2 participating teams, we actually had 52 teams, making a total of 209 participants coming from 42 different countries around the world. That's quite a staggering number, at least in my opinion. And these 52 teams produced over 70 data solutions to 7 different challenges, for which we will have a small brief overview in this presentation. These challenges, as Miguel also mentioned, came from a variety of organizations. So we have quite a diverse group of these organizations. We work together with the Dutch architectural firm UN Studio, the Urban AI think tank, Bristol City Council, the City of Cascais, Urban Analytics, which was the collaborative platform for urban innovation, the City of Porto, Porto Digital, and last but not least, Open Weather, which provided the weather information from all around the world. And also a huge thank you to Eurocities, who helped us in this journey in getting to know the cities and also the possible data challenges that they might face. So actually, World Data League is structured into 2 different stages, a semifinals and a finals. And in each of those stages, the participants could choose the challenge on which they would like to work on. And on the semifinals and on the final, there was only 1 challenge. So these I will present right now. One thing to mention maybe that these challenges grew in difficulty there as the competition progressed. So it became harder and harder also for the participants. During the first stage, the focus was environment. And here we focused more precisely on one hand, predict the air quality in a busy streets. And we worked with data from Stade Houdekskade streets in Amsterdam, which is one of the most chaotic streets in the Dutch capital. Several organizations that are located there, including UN Studio, want to improve the street and leverage data for doing so. The second challenge was waste production for its reduction, where the participants worked on the data from Austin, Texas, in order to optimize waste collection and also its reduction. Here, for example, you could see one of the results from one of the teams. This was actually the team that was placed first in the challenge, and they proposed to create an intelligent decision support system for waste policy and decision making. This system can map waste generation in different regions and forecast waste and recycling per region inside Austin, Texas. And it can also generate cohorts of region based on socioeconomics factors and provide macro level target metrics based on the performance of the region. Basically, the system allows to identify problematic areas due to rapid increase in waste generation and also where's the exact places where there's a low recycling performance, and therefore the cities can directly target those in campaigns. on stage 2, that was all about mobilities. The city of Cascais proposed to solve the challenge of optimizing routes for public transportation during interruptions. Other challenges included the optimization of drop-off points for e-scooters in the city of Porto and predicting the flow of people based on mobility data, and use those insights to improve the transportation system. I would like maybe to use this opportunity to already call the first team member that we have here as us, who came to present his work. And let me just put him on stage with us. Okay. Hi, Peter. Can you hear us? And as usual, there is always a small technical problem. Peter, can you turn on your camera and microphone?
Is it okay now?
Yeah,
Yes.
perfect.
Okay.
So,
Finally.
hi,
Yeah.
Peter. How are you doing?
Thanks. Fine.
Could you maybe tell us a bit more about yourself and introduce yourself?
Yeah. I'm working as a performance manager at a telecommunications company, but I mostly deal with actually lots of data analysis activities during my days. And well, I'm quite proud to be here after all these tough challenges that you gave us in the WDL.
Indeed. So your challenge was actually one of the highest, well, your solution to the challenge was actually one of the highest placed in the leaderboard. So this is also one of the reasons why we invited you. I think you will talk to us about the e-scooter challenge. So if you would like to share your screen and start off, go ahead.
Yeah, why not? So let me share my screen. And this one. Yeah, is it visible now? Yeah, I think so. We were a team of 3. So basically 2 colleagues joined me in this challenge. So Imre Boda and Zsolt Kegyes-Brassai also contributed to the work that you can see here. And then the challenge. Let me change the slide. Yeah. So we received GPS data that showed us that 1 out of 4 scooters, so 25% of e-scooters are left after using them more than 10 meters away from designated parking places. Even though users actually get fined after this behavior. And well, this is very good data for exploring the usage patterns, so the way people would like to use their scooters, where they would like to drop them off. And what could happen is that most likely these people abandoning their scooters, they cannot find appropriate return location, or well, they don't want to waste time by looking for these kind of locations. And we can assume that if there was an appropriate location within sight, so easily accessible and visible, then there would be a better chance of returning these e-scooters properly there. So following this logic, we can say that basically the closer we bring the parking locations to the actual encountered or real drop-off hotspots where people tend to abandon their e-scooters, the higher the likelihood of people finding them, hence returning their e-scooters properly to these parkings. And this way we can reduce the annoyance that these e-scooters can cause in some cities. Well, obvious solution would be just to increase number of parkings, yeah. But in Porto, we had a limitation of 210 parking spots as a maximum. So, well, the other way. So, what else we can do? This is a constraint that we have to consider. So then what we can do is that we move around the parking spots in a way that we minimize the distance, the aggregated total distance to the encountered drop-off hotspots where people tend to abandon their scooters. So for this optimization to run efficiently, we had to use a mapping solution. We had to use Uber's H3 hex map to split Porto's area to equal hexagonal cells. Well, this allows us to make simple calculations, simple distance metrics, for example. So the way this works is that here we see, e-scooters. Like in this cell, we have e-scooters that are abandoned somewhere in this area. We know this by the GPS coordinates we received. And then in this cell, we have a parking spot. So the scooters from this cell should have been placed most likely to this parking spot. And then what we do with this information is that we assign a cost to all these scooters left in this cell. And this cost is the number of steps we have to take on the hex map to move the scooters back to the nearest parking spot. So scooters in this cell represent a cost of 1. Yeah, and following the same logic, so scooters in this cell, for example, they represent cost of 2 because you have to take 2 steps, etc. So we can set up a total distance metric actually for the whole city, counting all the abandoned scooters and counting all the distances, all the steps it takes to bring them back to the nearest parking spot. So at the start of our exercise, the total cost was 42,000. Now, when we start moving around the parking spots, this metric may decrease or increase. If we do it right, then it will decrease. Yeah. And with our algorithm, we managed actually to bring this metric down to just 30,000. So that was a reduction of 27%, which is, I think, significant. Now, so how this works in practice. So the results that we created were presented on a map dashboard with the proposed parking spot changes. So here, green means, parking is at the right location, no change is necessary. Red means, like here, that, probably we could free up this location out of the pool of 210 allowed parking locations and use this or reuse this parking spot at a better location, probably here, which is recommendation for a new position here, marked by blue. And one thing to consider here is that this is based on data of, I think, 4 months. So these recommendations might change, of course. So usage patterns may fluctuate across seasons, or it can entirely shift over time. So we could only analyze, we can say, just a single point in time. So a regular and repeated execution of this optimization is required or would be necessary to apply this in practice. And of course, if you can increase the time range, the data can become more accurate. What you can also observe here is that there are many gray cells. So the gray cells represent still locations where there could be abandoned scooters. But our hope is that if we bring parking locations closer to these gray cells, like here, probably this proposed blue would attract scooters from the neighboring cells. So that means we could actually decrease the total number of dropped off or improperly dropped off e-scooters across the city. To sum up, basically this is what we wanted to achieve. So by decreasing distance to nearest parking location, we can decrease the number of dropped off or abandoned e-scooters in Porto. Yeah, so that's my summary of the exercise. I don't know if you have any question.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'm wondering if there's any question from the audience. So you can either write your question in the chat on your right-hand side, or you can also raise your hand and come on stage and ask a question. I think that is fine as well. If not, maybe I have one question for you, Peter. It's that we also know that sometimes these GPS are prone to quite some error. Do you have an idea of how much this error could impact also the work or the algorithm that you have developed?
Uh, that's a good question. What kind of statistics we can get out from this GPS? So in the measurements we received, there were no accuracy information. So what is possible is to apply. Like we see quite some cases where the GPS recordings didn't make sense. So those can be filtered out, of course. So when the trip information, so starting point and end point doesn't make sense, then those kind of trips were also eliminated from our analysis.
Okay. And another question I have here is that could you maybe re-explain the cost implications? Because is that the cost of the scooter company moving the scooters back to the
No,
parking base, or is it the cost
no,
of the fines?
no. It's an artificial metric. So that's a metric that we use to describe how well the parkings are placed. And of course, this can be translated into cost of scooter company as well, but it's probably not directly, because users can, I guess, pick up these scooters anywhere. So if they find an abandoned scooter, they can just pick up and use it. So it's not the scooter company who has to place all the scooters back, but it actually hurts their reputation, I guess. So they also have to work with these kind of problems. So yeah.
Okay.
So the answer is partly yes and no. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think I don't see any also further question. Thank you for your presentation and your work. And as I said, as Miguel also already mentioned, it's that all of this could be found, the summary can be found in Insights report, but also the complete report of what Peter and his team did can be found in our code repository. So there is an executive summary, which you can read through and try to understand. And if you have any question, I think you can also reach out to Peter himself as well. Peter, thank you so much for your time and your presentation.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so now let's go back to our presentation and let's continue discussing the challenges. So as the stages progress, then we went to the semifinals. For the semifinals, we were transported to Costa Rica. And the main challenge was to come up with a safety score for women in Costa Rica as to help map out where crimes against women have the highest chance to occur. One team came up with such a dashboard where you could put at each region and find what is the score for each zone, which is not only presents the score but also explains what are the main factors behind these scores, and then these can be used, of course, by the government, but also in general for change policy inside Costa Rica. And the last was the identification of dark ecological corridors for bats in Bristol. So to talk about this more, I have João here with me. Let me just bring him also on stage. And let's see, João, can you turn on your camera and your microphone? Yeah, perfect, João. Hi, how are you doing?
Hello, good. And you?
Good, perfect. It's a nice day today. Maybe could you tell us first a bit about yourself and how did you come to World Data League before we just kick off your presentation?
Yes, of course. So, yeah, my name is João. I'm from Porto, and I'm a biomedical engineering master student. I'm in my final year. And I came to World Data League because I'm purpose driven in most of the projects that I get working with. So I found it interesting to get together data science and sustainability problems so that we could make the world a place a bit better.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for your effort. So actually, João here, he's part of the Yodas team who finished first on World Data League and won the finals in Lisbon this year. And João will present now the product, the data-based product that developed for identification of dark ecological corridor. João, the stage is yours. Feel free to share your screen.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. So today I'll be talking about our solution for the finals, which was about the street light system optimization for dark ecological corridors in Bristol. And you may wonder, why is this a problem? In fact, light pollution affects 88% of European surface, and it has huge repercussions in life. For instance, bats have its activity reduced by 90%, and moths are being decimated in England, for instance. But humans are also affected by this. So there's something that must be done. And the possible solution for that is creating a network of dark corridors in the city so that we can mitigate the impact of light pollutions, in this case, in specific in bats. Okay, so how did we do this? We used data, of course, and for that we handcrafted a set of metrics so that we could deliver some actionable insights. We started by thinking, okay, we want to make things better for bats, but we have to consider humans as well. So to answer the question, how uncomfortable for humans would it be to have this zone a dark corridor, we created this kind of human discomfort score. For that, we used the data that we had available in Bristol, and we consider stuff like bus stops, hourly car flows, the number of bus stops in a certain radius, and the population density. This way, we could consider whether or not shutting down a light would have big impact in human life. On the other hand, to answer the question, how uncomfortable would it be for bats to have this zone, we created the opposite score, which was animal discomfort score. And here we would assess things like where is the nearest wildlife corridor, where is the nearest water body, where are the most important trees, and where are the preys for bats. And with all of this information, we could understand, okay, this is a very important zone for bats. We want to have this shut down so that they can freely move here and connect them with the clusters. On the other hand, we needed to understand which zones to connect in the city. And for that, we created geographical clusters for bats that were just the results of the sightings, the past sightings of bats in the city. Uh, Additionally, each cluster was provided with the cluster importance score. And this score took into consideration the number of bat sightings, the density of these sightings, the number of preys, whether or not it had protected species, if it had recent activity or not, and if it was an important cluster. For instance, had it juvenile bats, were these bats roosting, breeding, or feeding, hibernating, having colony activities? All of this was taken into consideration. Okay, so with this was our first iteration. On the right-hand side, you have the dark corridors as we proposed, with the bat clusters in red. So these are the zones that we are connecting in the city of Bristol. But this is very simplistic. As you know, bats hibernate during the winter and fall, and therefore they have an increase in activity during spring and summer. So we have to consider that these sightings may also fluctuate throughout the year, and they fluctuate throughout the seasons. So taking into consideration this, we would have different dark corridors for each season. On the other hand, bats are living things, and they are parts of an ecosystem. Ecosystems have a very close relation between prey and predators, and therefore we decided that it would be a good idea to model the predator-prey dynamics with the Lotka-Volterra equations. With these insights, we were able to adapt our lighting system for a period of 10 years, for instance. And in this slide, you can see the results of these considerations in time. On the left-hand side, the evolution throughout the seasons, and on the right-hand side, the evolution throughout the years that you can see moving. Okay, with this, we created this product, biodiversity. It was what came out of our work, and our goal was to make cities and wildlife symbiotic. This is a very simplistic sketch that you can see here. Basically, we delivered a central management system for the Bristol City Council, and it enabled the City Council to enable to take its decision and manage the lighting system, to consult which lights should be shut down and which lights, where were they. So taking into consideration which lights to shut down, uh, how much impact was being generated. But this is not only that. The product that we created was downloadable as a Python package. It was ready and easy to use. As I said before, it's crafted for each season and can be updated on the go, and provides the City Council with a glimpse into future population dynamics. Additionally, it can be used in new cities, different demographics, different geographies, but can also be used with different species. So it's also very modular and very adaptable to new conditions and new restrictions. Okay, cool, but what's the impact of all of this? Well, we estimate that by 2023, so 1 year ago, in 1 year's time, we could save 185 tons of CO2 just from turning off the lights. We could increase 10% of bat activity, and money-wise save 25,000 pounds in electricity. So you can see here that we have a balanced, three-folded impact that can benefit both the wildlife and the City Council. So that's all from my side today. Thank you very much. And if you have any question, feel free to ask them.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see if there is any questions from any of the participants. But meanwhile, maybe I would like to ask you, for yourself, what do you see the biggest? What was the biggest challenge looking at all this bad data for you?
Yeah, good question. I think that at this point of the competition, all the teams were great data scientists, great data analysts. For us, the biggest challenge was to deal with this new domain. We had never dealt with biodiversity problem. So I think that the biggest challenge was to have some kind of domain expertise. And that's why at the time of the challenge, we went to talk with an expert in bats and moths. And I think it made a huge difference. So I think it's very important to understand the domain we're talking about, the domain we're working with, so that we can make the right assumptions and engineer our metrics in the best way to have actual impact and not just some random analytics.
Okay, and then there's a question from Gitty. Do you know if the city of Bristol applied this in real life?
Well, we are working towards that. We maybe you can explain that better, but we have conversations going on, and we hope to have it being implemented soon, together with other cities probably, but soon.
Okay, then I have another question. Incredibly interesting. How easy would it be to replicate in other cities? What would they need? And secondly, how easy would it be to use this model for other species as well?
Well, it's actually quite simple. To replicate it in other cities, we would just need a new map and new data sets with the bus stops, the population density, and everything. So as soon as we got the data in the same formats, we would just run the algorithms again. As for the species, well, we can take a simplistic approach and just adapt the formats of the data sets, include new, for instance, in the bots use case, we had the sightings throughout like 50 years or something. And that was the main data set that we were using because it would provide us with information of where the bots were. If we had a similar data set, for instance, for squirrels, we could do just run all the algorithms again. The thing is, the domain is very important, and there were considerable assumptions that we took here. For instance, bats hibernate, bats look for water bodies or big old trees, and maybe that wouldn't be true for squirrels. Maybe they would look for parks or stuff like that. So we would have to re-engineer a bit our metrics, but I think that overall, having the pipeline created, it would be quite straightforward.
Okay, so maybe a couple of just well, Giti says that she has a map and a lot of bat data sets, so I think that's also
Great.
good news if you want to continue experimenting. And the question is, her question is already right off the bat, so to speak, is how can she use it for her city, which is Utrecht?
Well, we would have to get the data, explore it a bit, understand how to adapt the data sets, as I said. And well, I think like if you could use the platform as we designed it, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, you could check which lights to turn down. It would take into consideration, as I said, all the static factors and the time factors, such as the season or the year. And then if you could know which lights to turn down, you could play a bit with the weights on each side and see, okay, now I'm having an impact of increasing 5% in bat activity. Maybe I want a bit more. Let's be a bit more strict and be better for bats and worse for humans. So just scrolling a small button, you could take those decisions and then have a report. Okay, turn this light, that.
Okay. Maybe one last question, just in terms of data, is that just a map of streetlights and bus stops that you need, besides the bat data, of course?
In terms, yeah. So we need the lights map. The bus stops is not mandatory. It was a solution that we found to have a representation of where humans would be. For instance, if you have a map with the underground or train stations or houses, it would also be useful. And for the bats, it's just the sightings. Where can we find their prey? In this case, it was moths. So yeah, I think that would be it.
Okay, perfect. Well, João, again, I thank you very much for your presentation and
Thank you.
your work on this challenge. I think it was, I can definitely say that it was quite an interesting endeavor, and you also already think received quite positive feedback. And Giti here already says you should also connect with her, so that's also great news. Hopefully, we can discuss this a bit further as well. Thank you so much, João, and see you soon.
Right.
Okay, so now it's time to bring our panel of speakers on stage, which is Danielle and João. Hi, so maybe you can turn on your cameras and microphones so everyone can see you as well.
Hello, can you hear?
Yeah, perfect. Hi, João, Danielle. All right, great.
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming here. So we'll have
Thank you.
So we'll just have a short conversation, just to a bit discuss what we just heard, and also a bit what data plays, what role does data play in cities, and what there is still to come. But maybe before that, you can just quickly do a quick introduction of who you are and what you do. Maybe you can start with Danielle. Danielle, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Leonid, and of course for the. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of delay, so I will try to.
If you can hear me, I'll go ahead. Okay. My name is Daniel Githira from the UNHabitat. I work with the data and analytics section. So I deal with the urban data. So mostly developing tools for cities to support in SDG monitoring and support, and also working on systems. In summary, thank you.
Thank you, João.
Hi, my name is João Bastos. I currently head of data analytics at Porto Digital, which is a non-profit that works with the city of Porto to do ICT projects and the living lab and other ideas we have with smart cities.
Okay, perfect. Maybe we can just kick off with a really simple question. Maybe if you could just tell us a bit about one of the latest projects or some project you found interesting that you worked inside the cities and how you see its application. And maybe we can now switch around. So first João and then Danielle, so we can ping pong here or there a bit.
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of interesting projects going in Porto. I think perhaps one of the most interesting ones, or at least the one we have with a bit of, let's say, an interesting byproduct, is a tool called Explore Porto, which we launched a year ago, year and 6 months, which allows ideally, that tourists could travel around the city, go to hotspots, check information, get ideas for public transportation, how to go to point A from point B. But actually, by analyzing the data later, we just realized that a lot of locals are using the data, especially locals in suburban areas that actually use the data to access public transportation schedules or to know what is the real-time arrival of a certain line. So that was very interesting to see. So we're now optimizing the tool to also provide more information in that sense. And of course, one of the tools we're developing is really connected to the challenge presented by one of the teams. So we have a tool that is managing the soft mobility in Porto. And we are very interested to look at the results from a World Data League to see how we can incorporate it in the tool as well. So we'll be following up on that as well.
Okay. Danielle, maybe from your perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so at UNHabitat, we do have projects that span across many domains. So we are working from the transport all the way to the environment, all the other components. And one of the recent projects that we have has got a cross-cutting implication on many themes. And this is the framework that we call the Global Urban Monitoring Framework. So this is a tool that we are supporting cities to implement. The tool has got a set of 77 indicators, and then it has got a rich metadata which looks into different indicators, how you go through the rationale for the indicator, then through the interpretation, the methodology, and also the metrics for the implementation. And then after that, it has got domains and city objectives laid out in like a matrix format. So we have domains, and then at the intersections of the domains and city objectives, we have the indicators, and then this aggregates together. Once you have the measurements, then it goes through the process of standardization and indexing, and then you're able to get very specific measurements on how your cities are performing in terms of specific dimensions, and this fits into the dialogue for city decision-making framework. So this is just one of the interesting projects that we're having.
Nice. And Danielle, maybe could you elaborate a bit on the importance of measuring these metrics that you mentioned? How can those guide cities as well?
Yeah, so what happens is that when you have a city and you have the decision makers, they need to identify where the challenges are, at least to channel the investments, and also when they are also making decisions on interventions. So what happens is, if you look at the transport measurements, you don't know how that compares with the need for the open spaces. So if you can have a framework that evaluates the importance and the impact of each of the different dimension to the performance of your city, then you are able to zoom into the very specific needs for your city. So this is more like a diagnosis tool where you have an umbrella view of your city, and then from there you are able to see the very key pertinent issues for your city. And then you can overlay this with the perception surveys for the population, your residents, and then you can see if there is a proper match between the perceptions of the city in terms of the gaps and the needs, and the diagnosis based on the data inputs and available tools to measure this.
Okay, thank you so much. Then also I would like to ask, maybe I think that there is also a question here. I would like to read up the report about this, Daniel, with them spread among. So will this information be spread among participants? So maybe if you could also share afterwards a bit more on this work. I think we already have interested participants in learning a bit more. So I think that would be also great. So maybe just a bit more, let's say, a bit more looking towards the future, and kind of envisioning a bit. How do you see the role of data, and how do you see what would be a perfect data-driven city for you? Maybe you can start now with João again, and then.
A perfect data-driven city. Okay. Yeah, I don't know a lot about the future, let's say in 20 years, but let's say in the time span of 1 to 5 years, it will be a city that actually makes decisions fully based on data. So instead of just making decisions based on the feeling or the ideas that people have, actually having the data to use and populate those decisions, which it is not easy. And I will not say is an issue of the analytics of the techniques being there, but actually maybe more, and perhaps I'm focusing too much on the location of Portugal and Porto itself, but of the literacy in data and digital literacy. So we need to bit more there. So people are aware that these tools exist and how to use them. And one day then we could have a fully city that's the decisions that they make are really optimized and they really solve the problems. And we can monitor the feedback that we get from those solutions as well.
Okay. And Danielle, what about you? What's your vision?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I very much agree with the Joe. Yeah, the data-driven city is basically the city that has, data guiding the decision-making frameworks and the systems. Yeah. So currently, I think we already have so much that is happening in terms of data, and I think what we might be struggling with now is transitioning from data to decision. We already have tools. I think we've seen innovation even today during the presentations that already we have tools that can give us very fine insights into the decision making. But then now when we move at the city's decision making table, then we need to ask ourselves whether how our innovations fit into the frameworks. Are they a priority for the city? So, and what do the city leaders, the city managers think about our innovation? So I think this is also part of the process of integrating the innovations into the frameworks for the city, so that we do not have a lot of innovations which do not go into the framework for the decision making. Yeah, but ultimately, once we are able to identify the priorities for the city, then we can develop the tools which fit directly into the decision making. So we do not have to think much about our actions because the data tells us what to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's I think we all amongst us share a bit this vision and this idea. But okay, so we have the vision, but then the question is, then what are the roadblocks, right? So I think that you're both of you are aware that there are many roadblocks when working with data. We also, as World Data League, encountered quite some problems. But maybe I would like to maybe hear a bit directly from you. How do you see these? What roadblocks are there ahead to get to that vision? Maybe now we can start with Danielle and then jump to João.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of tools, we are quite advanced. So what I see as the roadblock today is mostly alignment of the tools with our needs. And of course, there's a huge data gap. We can say that because if you go for example, to the small cities, we struggle with getting data which can guide decision making for the small cities. And at the global level, we also struggle even with defining the city because every context, every country has got its own definition for the city. So if you want to compare cities without having a common understanding on what a city is, then this becomes a challenge. Yeah, but I think we already have also the challenge of a lot of data, making sense of the data is a problem, and also alignment of the data into common frameworks. For example, we are now encouraging cities to have like urban observatories where all the data comes to the observatory, then the data is cleaned and the data, the sense is made of the data, and then we have like a common pool knowledge for the city, so that we have all the parts coming together. But I think with the coordination, we have a lot to start with, and the situation is already good to get going.
Good. João, what about you? What's your perspective from the ground?
For sure, I agree with Daniel, and I'll add two things. Yeah, one of them is going to be a bit maybe a personal opinion. The other one is a bit more on the ground situation. So I start with the one that's more factual. I think so. We have a lot of interest in the analysis and the solutions for this. So there's a lot of this. But the biggest issue or the biggest hindrance we find always is getting the actual data. And then again, it's going to touch on digital literacy and these issues that people are not aware of this. They're not aware of the data they have. Lots of department institutions do not know that they have this data or they can use it. So you first have to make them aware, then you have to create the engineering to get the data, which is also a big issue. So it's not only the analysis part. So this is all a process that we're seeing that in Porto is happening. So we're making lots of efforts in that sense. But again, like Daniel was saying, Porto is a big city, and there are smaller cities that don't have these resources or this power. So then we'll have to see how we can branch this out. And a bit on the personal notes, I think is also factual, but I don't have the data to support it. So I'll just give it is I think we're having a bit of a really fast evolution in technology. It is not being followed up by a societal evolution. So more and more we notice that, let's say, part of the population that is a bit more hard to reach technology-wise. So let's see the elderly or maybe people with not so much education, they don't understand what's going on. So if you talk to them about AI-based job matchmaking, that's scary for them. So we also need to fill this gap of how we can educate and teach people about what is going on in the behind the scenes to get a bit more support on these things happen. So I think there's a bit what I can add to this answer.
Okay, well, that's actually an interesting insight, and I think that we all share a bit this opinion, especially that all these new terminology and words that are keep on popping up in the news. That sometimes it's just hard to teach everyone
Yeah.
what we're talking about. Maybe just as a last question, looking at all the challenges or all the potential that you've seen that cities can use data on, and also from your experience, maybe you can share a bit what are some of the low hanging fruits for cities in terms of data. So basically, what if they don't do much with data? What are the things they could do without investing much resources? That it's usually quite scarce. Maybe João first, and then we can go to Daniel.
Okay. Well, that's I'm gonna say it's not an easy question, to be
I know.
honest, because these are different needs. But let me think. I think that so even if you have not a lot of technological resources or needs, sometimes a simple Excel sheet or something small, you can pick up the data. So I think one very low hanging fruit is digitalizing a lot of the information you have. So recently I saw an example of tooling being made for this 2030 carbon neutral approach, which would be optimizing energy efficiency for public buildings. And there are automatic solutions, of course, and there are a lot of pre-made tools. But simply, if you can digitalize information you have on your buildings, getting this all populated, this might be very low-hanging fruit for smaller cities. You can then make easy calculations. They're available online. You can just pick them up, and this can give you a lot of savings on the optimization of your electricity with all these issues. So small things like that. So looking at data you might have lost, asking a data analyst or a data scientist, or reaching out to World Data League to get experts around the world. Just gather the data you have and digitalize it. That's really the first step you should do. That's low cost and you can get there. And actually, I remember one. This is useful. Recently, I also saw an idea from the city of Utrecht and Rotterdam, I think. So it's a combination of a lot of cities in the Netherlands. And this is a bit not so data related, but we have this term like digital twins popping up a lot, right? So the idea that they made is fantastically smart, which is use Unity to create the whole virtualized world. So just use a very small game engine to create the world, populate it with digital data they have about buildings, information they have in the city, and they have a very interesting model for digital twin of the city of Utrecht, for example, which was fascinating to see. And I think it overall taken the cost of a yearly 3,000 euros. So that's really low hanging fruit, for instance.
Okay. Thank you so much, João. And Danielle, maybe any advice from you?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I'm very much in agreement that a part of the civil service needs to be.
I think we're losing a
One
bit.
thing to
Danielle?
have the data. It's also sorry.
Maybe
Uh,
you were
I
losing a
hope I'm
bit.
back
Maybe you
now.
can start from the beginning. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah, so what I was saying is that indeed we have opportunities, like for example, capacity development, to make sure that the data that is there feeds into what we require for the cities. Capacity development for the civil service, I think. For the city leaders, I can tell you for sure, if you have all these innovations and the city leaders are not on board, then it becomes a problem because they're not able to integrate this into the system for the city development. Something else I see as a huge opportunity, it has to do with disaggregation of data, where now at the collection of data, then we have this fine spatial resolution where we can see the specific needs at the location level, whether we have level 2, level 3 data. This can guide a very specific intervention for our areas, which I think is a huge opportunity. Another opportunity is the open knowledge that we are discussing today. So many people have thrown themselves into innovation, even at no cost, and they're giving the solutions to the cities. So I think this is something that we can, of course, take advantage of and make sure that we have something coming out of it. And from UNHabitat, we are also pushing for diagnosis frameworks, where we have frameworks which can guide us, diagnose our cities, not just develop isolated solutions, but also to have a diagnosis tool that can rank our demands so that we see where our investment should go into. Yeah, so there's quite a lot that is on our table. Of course, we're also struggling with overload of data and all this, but I think at the end of it, we can move on with taking advantage of the small gains that we already have and the small inputs. I'm also thinking about now the smart cities. When you're building new design, new developments, then we know what a smart building is. So we can already design a building that takes into consideration these components. So this becomes easy now in monitoring our buildings after we develop, because we have the technology to guide us how to design the future. Yeah, so I mean, there's so much we could talk about this, and
Yeah,
I'm
of
happy
course,
for that.
of course. Of course. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. And Jean, so I think that's all the time we have. I would love to continue chatting with you for another half an hour, but unfortunately, this is all the time that we have. And thank you so much for coming. I hope you will stick still a bit around for the breakout rooms that will just happen in a moment. Otherwise, thank you and see you in a bit.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so now that we had the small discussion, the next part of the agenda actually comes towards breakout rooms. So how the breakout rooms will happen is that we will have two discussion topics. One of them will be taken up by Miguel, and the second one will be taken up by our dear data scientist and the person who helps me to scavenge all these challenges, Tamara. And the two topics for discussion will be what could be the best topics for World Italy to tackle in the upcoming editions, and where can World Italy help further for cities with data challenges. So these are two different topics. I think Miguel will now, he's just right here next to me. He will create the breakout rooms, and we have just a little bit under 20 minutes to discuss these. Okay, and I think that we should be back. So I will also ask Miguel to join me because he's just right next to me.
Here I am.
And here we are.
The magic.
So we would like to probably use this chance to conclude a bit on what were the main outcomes from the discussion groups. So maybe I will ask first Miguel to present a bit what was discussed in his group and what was the topic, and then I'll ask Tamara maybe to raise her hand meanwhile, so we can also bring her on stage to give her conclusions.
Yep. So the breakout room that I managed, the topic was how can WDL continue helping cities. We had João, Peter, and Daniel there. So we actually had two people, João and Peter, who are data scientists and were participants this year, and Daniel, who has just finished the roundtable. So he has more of a social impact point of view and boots on the ground, because he comes more from the the UNHabitat point of view. So we actually started with Daniel, and he told us that at UNHabitat there's a lot of indicators, a lot of data about different problems that cities have. One example that he gave was safety in public transportation. So we just kind of grabbed that one and kept digging deeper. Peter mentioned in the beginning the like how if we were to solve this problem, how could we tackle it? And when one example could be taking an approach of digital twins, digital twin cities. So, for example, having cameras on buses would be a way to very easily solve this problem with computer vision. But obviously, as he pointed out, there's also some drawbacks, which is like privacy infringements. Then João also pointed out that, for example, having data on the where and when of when crimes happen, so data regarding location and time. But obviously, having algorithms that predict these types of things can lead to biases, especially when we're talking about crimes. And that's a big concern that he had. And we started talking about this balance between privacy infringement and safety, and how do we find a balance. And the problem with, for example, just blindly having digital twin projects can sometimes be dangerous if we don't fully grasp the context of each city. We had 10 minutes, so we couldn't save the world, and well, pretty much we spent the whole time, but that was essentially it in terms of conclusions from my group. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, João. It was great discussing with you guys.
Thank you so much, Miguel, for moderating as well the group. And maybe Tamara, can you also turn on your camera and microphone?
Yes. Can you see and hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, we also had a really interesting discussion framed around the question, what topics can the World Data League tackle in the future? So not necessarily this year, where we tackle basically everything with all sustainability goals, but in the years to come. And I was with Heather, João, Viviana, and Mahmoud in a group. I hope I'm not forgetting someone. I took notes. And Heather started and brought up a very, very important topic. Often you have co-benefits. If you tackle one issue that has to do with social good, you often improve others. Like if you tackle an issue about biodiversity, you probably end up with solutions that also save energy, like in the example that we've seen with the last final challenge. If we turn off lights for the bats, we also save energy, and we also improve the quality of life of people. If they take less cars, there will be less air pollution. So we are in this great space where you end up with co-benefits rather than having to balance in most cases. So that was a good point. And she also mentioned that Eurocities is heavily working on environment and biodiversity challenges and tackling the current energy crisis in Europe. So that's definitely a topic of a lot of interest for her and for Eurocities. João explained that what I already mentioned in the panel discussion, digital literacy is a big issue. If you start to create solutions, people will not want to adapt them or will be opposed if they don't understand what's happening. If an app tells you you have to turn off your lights now, I'm not sure whether you're going to do that if you don't understand why and how, or if suddenly your public transportation bus stop is moved, you might feel inconvenienced if you don't understand that this will also lead to lower energy costs and better air quality on your street down the line. So these dependencies and interactions that are sometimes even hard to grasp for us data people, and we need our algorithms to find them for us. How do we communicate this to people? Which is a very, very good point, and I think something that we can talk about. Vivian added to that it also helps if you have citizen engagement. If you ask your citizens and involve them from the start, that helps to feel like you have a stake in it and really make people feel like they are heard. So they understand, like if you ask them, what do you want to improve in your area? And they say, I want to improve air quality. And down the line, their bus stop gets moved because of that. They're much more likely to find that really interesting because they feel like they had a hand in it and they are really respected in their opinion and concerns. Mahmoud shared something very interesting. He's from Egypt, and they actually have satellite and drone surveillance footage that monitor how people move through cities, how cities expand. which the whole breakout room was very jealous of that type of data. We'd love to all have that. But that's something interesting that we could also look into, like how to incorporate aerial data and like very advanced types of data into our challenges. And that led back to the final round of talking, where it was about, well, we often have data, but how do we find it? So data literacy within cities, within organizations, which is a problem not only for cities, but also for companies a lot of time. You may have heard of the term data swamp or write once, read never, which has been an issue in the past. And also the quality of the data, which is something that we have discussed before. But how do we help people produce high quality data? Because it's not maliciousness. It's often the opposite. You get a government form, you want to be extra helpful, and instead of putting in a number, you put in a whole comment explaining your situation. But downstream, there's a string in a column that should have integers. So how do we manage that on the data engineering side, but also on the, again, education side, so people know how to help to produce good data? And I hope I didn't forget an important point. Please put it in the comments if you feel not heard. But I think that was the summary of our breakout.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tamara.
Thanks, Tamara.
Thank you. So thank you, Tamara. Thank you also, Miguel, for this nice breakout rooms. And I think the discussion seemed interesting. I jumped around a bit the rooms. And now the final parts, just a really tiny small presentation. So don't run away just yet. And Tamara, thank you very much. I'm going to just put you off stage. I think you can also go on stage yourself. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so now I will just share my screen again and okay, and there we go. So so now it's the final part, and we will discuss the call for challenges. The call for challenges is actually already out. And we are looking currently for challenges for 2023 edition. It is just want to highlight again that it's completely free to submit a challenge to the competition and run a challenge. What we actually need from you is more your know-how and the data that could assist us into solving those. Well, what do you need to start? Well, you need to think of a challenge that could possibly be solved with data. Of course, we can help you with that. So if you already have a rough idea, feel free to get in touch with us. And then also the data that can come with that to help solve the challenge. But again, if you're not sure if it can help you or not, get in touch. Maybe that we can try to find some data which is outside of your own city. So there's, for instance, a lot of satellite data, a lot of open data that is available that sometimes could be used for exactly the purpose that you need. How does the process look like? Well, first, we now have a form where you submit an initial idea for the challenge plus the possible data to be used. And then we will select three challenges for the World Data League 2023. And then some additional meetings might take place between just to see if we understood correctly your challenge, to see if the data is right, to take some questions as well. And then we will work together also on improvement of the challenge with concrete intent and goals and output for the participants. There is going to be a step where we need to also prepare the data for the challenge. And as you just met Tamara, she will help you along the way there. And then during the competition, we also need for you to be available to answer some challenge/data related questions, so that if the participants don't understand something or need a clarification, it is also there. Of course, we will be there to help you along the way to any of these steps. And I mean, we are pretty open, so feel free to reach out to us by email. Finally, if you're interested to apply, you can find all the information on our website, worlddataLeague.com. And also there's a link to the call for the challenges that Miguel will post in the chat. And if you're watching the recording of the session, you can just look in the description below and find the link there. The deadline is to apply by the 15th of November. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Well, and maybe just to finalize the World Data League Insights Report launch here, I think this is a wrap for us. We would like to thank for both of the teams for taking their time to present the outcomes, to João and Danielle, our speakers, and of course to all the participants who are here to give insights, and of course to Eurocities who provided these wonderful installations for us to hold this event. And we hope to see your challenge or you yourself at World Data League 2023. Thank you so much.